If you're a YouTube creator, a content creator, if you're a musician or a writer or a blogger, a podcaster, if you paint, if you draw, if you make comic strips, if you are a receptionist or an executive assistant, I would consider what you do art when you interact with people who come into the lobby or come into for an appointment. The fact that you can look them in the eye and make them feel welcome and comfortable, that's art, right? So like art loosely defined, whatever your art is, should you pay attention to the critics? Hey, Brian Miller here, former magician turned author, speaker, podcast host, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff. If you're a regular subscriber, thanks so much for sticking with me. And if you're new here, welcome to the channel. I have something really important to talk about today. 1 year ago, I published this, my first book, 3 New People, Make the Most of Your Daily Interactions and Stop Missing Amazing Opportunities. I'm not bringing it up to talk about the book itself, but the big news I got this week is that this book was reviewed in Publishers Weekly. Now, if you're not in the author world, if you're not a big book reader, just stick with me for a second. This is going to be very applicable to basically everybody, especially if you're a YouTube creator, a content creator. So Publishers Weekly is like the publication for book reviews for a long, long time. You know, they were the gatekeepers. They were the ones that if they reviewed your book and it was positive, people would buy it. It's like, you know, in modern times, if Oprah shouts out your book, people are going to buy it. And of course, things have changed. It's not quite like that anymore. But what I want to talk about is the fact that, yes, I got a positive, actually a glowing review in Publishers Weekly. Now, this was important to me for 2 reasons. One, that I got a review at all. And 2, I self-published this book. And Publishers Weekly is not in the habit of reviewing self-published books. They do, but not that often. So the fact that they reviewed it at all is amazing. And the fact that they reviewed it at all and it was self-published is incredible. And then on top of that it was positive, let alone raving. I mean, the final sentence of the review had the word brilliant in it. So like, I'll take it. And I was on cloud 9 when I saw this review. It popped up just a few days ago and I couldn't believe it. It had been a year almost since the book was released and I had just given up hope that it would be reviewed in such a prestigious or prolific publication. But as I was in my ecstatic, cloud 9 moment, I realized something. If it had been a bad review, I would have ignored it. I would have brushed it off. I wouldn't have talked about it, and I wouldn't have let it get me down. I mean, it would have hurt me for a minute, but then I would have hand-waved it and said, well, that reviewer just didn't know what they were talking about. Or that reviewer just didn't get it. Or that reviewer probably doesn't normally review books like this. In other words, I would have had it both ways. It's a positive review, so I feel amazing and I want to shout the review from the rooftops to everyone in the world. But if it had been a negative review, I would have ignored it, brushed it off, said that person's opinion doesn't matter. And that's an internal contradiction. You can't have it both ways. You can't have reviews that are negative not matter, and reviews that are positive really matter, right? You can't go, well, you can't give weight to the positive reviews and ignore the negative ones with the same gusto. It doesn't work like that. If you're going to give weight to the positive ones, you have to seriously give weight to the negative ones, and or you can just not give that much weight to reviews at all. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, is how much weight should we be giving to people who review our work, our art? If you're a YouTube creator, a content creator, if you're a musician or a writer or a blogger or, a podcaster, if you're a public speaker, right? If you paint, if you draw, if you make comic strips, if you are a juggler, anything. If you make art, if you are a receptionist or an executive assistant, I would consider what you do art when you interact with people who come into the lobby or come into for an appointment. The fact that you can look them in the eye and make them feel welcome and comfortable, that's art, right? So like art loosely defined, whatever your art is, should you pay attention to the critics? Maybe. Are the reviews coming from someone? My hair light turned off. Are the reviews coming from someone that is your ideal audience, the kind of person that you want to do your work for? Are the negative comments on your YouTube channel from the kind of people you're trying to help? If they are, you might consider paying attention to them. If they're not, ignore them. In the words of Seth Godin, shun the non-believers. But on the other side, are the positive reviews, if you're going to feel really good about the positive reviews, if you're going to shout them out, if you're going to retweet them, are they coming from the kind of people that you're trying to impact? Because just because it's a positive review doesn't necessarily mean it's the kind of person that your work is for. So whether the reviews are positive or negative, we should really only care about them if they're coming from the kind of people that we are trying to change, that we are trying to impact. This painting that's right up here behind my desk, the buildings, my grandfather painted that. I call him Pa. Those of you who've been on the channel a long time met Pa in a vlog years ago, probably a couple of different times. He is a lifelong amateur artist. He has never painted or drawn professionally. In other words, he's never gotten paid for his art, for his painting, for his drawing in his life. He was a dentist by trade, a very successful one, but a dentist. And I have dozens of his paintings. They're all over the house. And there's hundreds at their house as well. And I've asked him for years, like so many have, don't you want to put your art into a museum? Don't you want to put it in somewhere? Don't you want to put it out into the world for someone other than our immediate family to enjoy it? And he says no. He says no every time. And the reason he gives every time is he makes his art because it brings him joy, because he believes in it. It brings him joy, and it also, he knows that his art brings joy to his wife, my grandmother, to me, to some of my cousins, and his, his kids, his family. But he doesn't want to put it in a museum because he doesn't want anybody else reviewing it, positive or negative. He doesn't care that much. I mean, he thinks it's nice when someone from the outside world comes into their house and sees a painting and really likes it. He thinks that's nice, but that's not why he makes his art. And so I think he's right to decide he doesn't want it in front of people because he makes it for him and a very, very specific audience, us, his family. But if you're going to put your work into the world, you have to decide how you're going to take in positive feedback as well as criticism. And you have to make a universal statement. Do I give weight to all feedback, positive and negative, or do I give no weight to all feedback, positive and negative? And if I'm being honest, I don't think we should be giving weight to the feedback. I don't think we should be giving weight to the positive stuff because you're not as good as your best work and you're not as bad as your worst. We are all on a sliding scale. Some days we are amazing. Some days we are not great. Most days we're somewhere in between, which is important because that means there's always somewhere to aspire to. There's always something better to reach for. And so when Publishers Weekly calls my book a brilliant system for deepening relationships or whatever it said, I don't have it with me. I haven't memorized it. I read it once. It makes me feel good. But the way that I want to leverage it, if I can make this happen, is I only want to leverage it insofar as it gives me more confidence in my own work. In other words, I don't want the review to be the positive thing. I want the review to make me feel more confident about my work and my new confidence about my work to be the positive impact, to be the positive result. So yes, read the reviews if you want to. But if you're going to get excited about the positive ones, you have to get upset about the negative ones. And that doesn't seem like a good trade-off to me. I think much better to take them all in as, okay, that was one person's opinion. That person loved it. That person, they didn't like it. But I'm doing my work for the people who care. And as long as people come up to me after my speeches and they buy the book because what they heard was so wonderful, they can't wait to dive in deeper, it doesn't really matter what Publishers Weekly said about it, even if it was raving, even if it was positive, because there's no such thing as Publishers Weekly. Publishers Weekly is just a collection of people with individual preferences, and if a different person over there had read the book, maybe they wouldn't have liked it. So am I going to promote the fact that Publishers Weekly gave a rave review to my book? Of course I am. But I'm not going to let it change my opinion of my work. All right, that's it for this episode of Thursday Thoughts. My name is Brian Miller. Thanks so much for sticking with me, and always remember that our world is a shared experience. Have a great day.